It is the game. It is an incredible rivalry at my age growing up. I mean, every year with Woody Hayes and Bo Schembechler. I know that's a long time ago, but I remember those games and what it was like. And there weren't 50 games on TV, and that was the one you did watch among a couple of others. Dan Hope, 11 Warriors, joins us on 365 Sports. Dan, thank you very much. Great setup. Everything's on the line. Your thoughts about as Ohio State enters this game and they had to be tested, it's good. Your thoughts about this is becoming what we used to see back in the day?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, but the stakes of this game just feel so much higher than they have in such a long time because, you know, we've seen other games in recent years where both teams were highly ranked and had great records. But with Michigan winning the game last year and ending that long winning streak that Ohio State had, you know, now this one really feels like it can go either way. You know, I think everybody's anticipating that this is going to be a great battle on Saturday, and there's so much on the line. 2 versus 3, 2 11-0 records. You know, I think this is from a grander standpoint of college football. When you think about a rivalry, this is everything you want the rivalry to be, and so it's going to be quite a spectacle on Saturday.
Dan, Michigan got a scare, almost losing to Illinois, and Ohio State got a scare this week against Maryland. That it took until the very end of the game to make that look like there was distance, but there really wasn't. Do you think both these teams were looking ahead a little bit? I mean, they're both playing good teams, but this is just such a huge one, like you just said.
Yeah, I think that was probably a factor. I mean, if you just look around the landscape of college football this past weekend, it seems like all the top teams had those kind of games. And so I think, you know, if a lot of rivalry games coming up this weekend, that was a pretty common theme across college football this week, but certainly for those two teams, like you said, I mean, this game is so big. I mean, Ohio State openly talks about how it prepares for this game every year and every week of the year. And Michigan has, you know, kind of taken a similar approach here in the last couple of years. And so I think that did have something to do with it. You know, the whole time going into that game against Maryland, I kept thinking back to 2018 where Ohio State needed overtime to beat Maryland. And it was the same situation going on the road, playing Maryland 1 week before playing Michigan the next week. And so I think certainly that probably was some of it for both teams involved.
Dan, what do you think has been kind of the storyline of this team now as we enter the final week of the regular season?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly a team that is improved from last season in terms of being a more balanced, more complete team. The defense has certainly improved upon what we saw from Ohio State last year, and that's the reason why Ohio State is 11-0, and Ohio State is in this position to have a chance to, you know, make a run in the college football playoff. But, you know, I think, you know, there's still the questions there of, you know, Ohio State, have they really been tested yet? You know, they played Penn State, they played Notre Dame, they played some top teams, but, you know, this is the real test. I think, you know, you think this team is really good, but I think on Saturday we're going to find out, is this team really good? I think that's probably true for both teams going into this game, but I think, you know, we know it's an explosive offense that is proven capable of putting up a lot of points. It's clear the defense is better than it was last year, but I think on both sides of the ball, this game, it all comes down to this and really determining whether Ohio State is an elite team, a national championship caliber team, or whether Ohio State is simply taking advantage of playing a lot of teams that it has superior talent over.
When it comes to that defense, I remember all the talk and the discussion and the uncertainty about, you know, the hire of Jim Knowles and what exactly that would look like and how that would pan out. How has it worked out? And granted, given the caveat of we haven't seen them against the best of the best just yet, but how has that gone in year one with Jim Knowles?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly been a success. Jim Knowles was just named today as a semifinalist for the Broyles Award as one of college football's top assistant coaches. And I mean, if you just look at the results, there's a clear difference in what Ohio State is doing defensively over what it was doing last year. It hasn't been perfect. I mean, I think you could see this past weekend that there's still some vulnerabilities in the defense. I think, you know, particularly for me, when I look at the pass defense and you just look at the teams that Ohio State's played, they just haven't really faced many top-level passing offenses. And so I think that's still a question, not even necessarily for this week, because Michigan is not a great passing team either, but just in general, if you think, you know, of a broader perspective of what could lie ahead for Ohio State, that I think, you know, the pass defense to me is still a question mark. But overall, this defense has clearly improved from last year. And I think the big difference you just see is the players have more confidence. When you talk to them, when you watch them play, they're way more confident in what they're doing defensively. They know there's a plan. They feel like they're being put in positions to succeed. Whereas I think a lot of times last year, players were confused. They didn't know exactly what they were supposed to be doing because the scheme didn't set them up for success. And so I think that's been really the big difference, is that these guys have really bought in to what they're being coached to do. And I think for the most part, it's worked very well.
Smith and Jigba last year, 95 catches, 1,600 yards, and of course the 9 touchdowns, and only 5 because of the injury. And this is not a
bowl game.
Yeah, and the bowl game where he had 25 or whatever it seemed like. But this is not a trick question. It's CJ Stroud has still put up big numbers, despite the fact the receiving core has been completely different than last year. Marvin Harrison Jr.'s taken up all the slack. Who's more valuable? And I know he's the quarterback. This year, when it came to, like, let's say, getting Heisman votes, Stroud or Harrison?
Man, that's a really good question because, Marvin Harrison has been phenomenal. I think, you could absolutely make a very strong case that he's been the best receiver in the country. I think you can absolutely make a strong case that Marvin Harrison Jr. has been Ohio State's best player, most outstanding player. I just think the things you see him do on a week-to-week basis are unbelievable. And certainly, like you mentioned, the fact that they didn't have Jackson Smith and Jigba, basically all year, that has allowed Marvin to really step into that number one receiver role, and he's thrived in it. But in the question of most valuable, I still got to go with CJ Stroud because we know, how valuable a quarterback is to an offense and how big of a difference it makes having an elite quarterback versus not having an elite quarterback. And we really don't know what it would look like if something happened to CJ Stroud because the guys behind him really haven't played much. And so, that's a massive question mark. But I still think you got to go in terms of most valuable. I got to go with CJ Stroud because he's the leader. He's the engine that makes that offense go. And he's the biggest reason why this team is in the position to be 11-0 this week.
Do you think he's had his Heisman moment yet, or will that come if they beat Michigan this week?
I think it would come this week. I think to me, I think whether he wins the Heisman is probably going to be determined on Saturday and how he plays in that game. I think if he can have that big game against Michigan, lead Ohio State to a victory with a great performance. We saw it the last time Ohio State and Michigan were both 11-0 entering this game. It was in 2006, and Troy Smith had a great performance in that game, and that propelled him to win the Heisman Trophy. And so I think CJ Stroud could certainly follow in his lead if he has that kind of performance this weekend. But I do think he needs that kind of performance this weekend to really solidify his case as a Heisman winner, because I think he's had a great year. But I think if you compare what he's done this year, maybe to some other Heisman winners in recent years, I don't think he's had that Heisman moment yet. I don't think he's had that one defining performance that you can really point to and say, that guy's a Heisman Trophy winner. And so I think it really is probably going to come down to this weekend in terms of whether he wins that trophy in a couple weeks.
Taking into account Michigan's injury issues for the time being at running back, what concerns you most about the Wolverines heading into this weekend?
Yeah, I think certainly that rushing offense is still right up there because, we've seen how good Blake Corum can be when he's healthy. And, we saw what happened last year where Michigan ran the ball all over Ohio State. And so I think, that's still the biggest question mark in my mind is just, is Michigan, going to be able to have that kind of success on the ground again as they have all year. But, I think you can also flip it to the other side of the ball too with Ohio State and their own running game, because we've seen that Ohio State has had a lot, some inconsistency with running the ball, and they've had a lot of injuries there as well. Maya Williams has been in and out of the lineup. Travion Henderson's been in and out of the lineup. Dallin Hayden had a really good game this past weekend, filling in for Travion Henderson after he went out of the game, but he's still a true freshman. And so I think that running game for Ohio State remains a question mark, and I believe Michigan has the number one ranked rushing defense in the country. And so, we know, Ohio State should be able to make a share of plays passing the ball, but in a game like this, they're going to have to be able to lean on that running game. They're going to have to be able to get those tough yards on the ground. And I think there's still a question mark going up against an opponent like this, whether that's something Ohio State will be able to do consistently.
Thank you very much, Dan. Great stuff. We appreciate it. Glad we could get you on for us and our audience. Thanks for your time and have fun. I know you will. This will be an incredible week leading up to that game on Saturday.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me. Have a great week.
You too. Go to 11 Warriors. He covers Ohio State. Dan, again, Hope with us on 365 Sports. Ohio